I posted a picture of my husband and me on date night, captioned it, "My favorite person." Within minutes, my mother-in-law commented, "That's what I used to call him." Then she added, "Some titles you never lose." I thought about deleting it. Instead, I replied, "Some titles you graduate from." Hopefully. I, 34 female, have been married to my husband, Dan, 35 male, for 10 years. We live in Asheville, North Carolina, with our 2 kids. Dan's mother, Patricia, has always been a bit overbearing, but things escalated recently. Last Friday, Dan and I finally had a date night after months of being busy with work and the kids. We went to our favorite local restaurant, and I posted a picture of us on Facebook with the caption, "My favorite person." Within minutes, Patricia commented, "That's what I used to call him." Then she added, "Some titles you never lose." I was taken aback. This wasn't the first time she had made such remarks, but this felt particularly pointed. I considered deleting the post, but instead replied, "Some titles you graduate from." Hopefully. The next morning, my phone was buzzing with messages from friends and family who had seen the exchange. Some were supportive, others were concerned. Dan noticed my distress and asked what was going on. I showed him the thread, and his face tightened as he read it. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't mean to cause drama." He sighed. "Mom has always had a hard time letting go. But this is crossing a line." We decided to let things cool down, hoping Patricia would realize the inappropriateness of her comments. A week later, we attended a family barbecue at Patricia's house in Charlotte. The atmosphere was tense. Patricia greeted everyone warmly, but barely acknowledged me. During dinner, she raised her glass and said, "To family, the ones who truly matter." The implication was clear. I felt a lump in my throat but chose to stay silent. Later, as I helped clear the table, Patricia approached me. "I saw your reply," she said coldly. "I felt it was necessary," I responded. She scoffed, "You're just a phase. He'll realize that eventually." I was stunned. Dan overheard and intervened. "Mom, that's enough. Emily is my wife, the mother of my children, and the love of my life. If you can't respect her, then you don't respect me." Patricia stormed off, leaving a trail of shocked relatives. In the following months, Patricia distanced herself. She declined invitations, missed birthdays, and barely called. Dan tried reaching out, but she remained aloof. Our children began asking about Grandma. We explained that sometimes adults need space to work through their feelings. It was painful, but we focused on our family, strengthening our bond and creating new memories. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock at our door. I opened it to find Patricia, drenched and holding a photo album. "Can we talk?" she asked softly. We sat in the living room, the album between us. She opened it, revealing pictures of Dan's childhood. "I was wrong," she began. "I let my insecurities cloud my judgment. I see now how happy you make him, how beautiful your family is. I'm sorry." Tears welled up in my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. From that day forward, our relationship began to heal. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Years passed, and our family grew stronger. Patricia became an active part of our lives, attending school events and family vacations. We found common ground, sharing stories and laughter. One evening, as we looked through old photos, Patricia pointed to the date night picture. "I remember this," she said. "It was the turning point, wasn't it?" I nodded. "Yes, it was." She smiled. "Some titles you graduate from." Hopefully. We both laughed, the past behind us and a future full of promise ahead. Things were calm for a while. Too calm. Dan's aunt passed away unexpectedly that spring, and we all drove to Raleigh for the funeral. Afterward, the family gathered in the attorney's office for the reading of the will. Patricia was acting like the matriarch again, confident, smug almost. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I kept my mouth shut. Then the lawyer read something that changed everything. "To Daniel, my godson, I leave the lake cabin in Asheville. To his wife, for her kindness and patience, I leave the vintage jewelry passed down from my mother. Keep it safe, Emily. Patricia's face dropped. Visibly. She interrupted. Wait. That jewelry is a family heirloom. It was supposed to go to me. She told me that herself. The lawyer calmly responded, I'm sorry, ma'am. Your sister changed her will 2 years ago. These are her final wishes. I was shocked. I barely even knew Dan's aunt, but apparently she had noticed everything. Every slight from Patricia. Every effort I made. Patricia didn't speak the entire car ride home. The next week, I started hearing things. Dan's cousin called me one night and asked, what did you do to Aunt Pat? She's been saying you manipulated her sister. That you drove a wedge between them. My heart pounded. She said what? She's telling people you tricked Aunt May into giving you those jewels. That you planned it. I was speechless. I had barely spoken to Aunt May outside of holidays. It didn't stop there. A few mutual friends unfriended me on Facebook. One even messaged, you really disappointed me. This woman was poisoning everyone against me. Dan was furious. She wants to turn this into a battle? Fine. We'll make it one. A few weeks later, I got a DM on Instagram. It was from a woman named Carla. I didn't recognize her name, but the message gave me chills. Hi, Emily. I know this is strange, but I think we should talk. I used to date Dan before you two got married. Patricia was involved in our breakup. I didn't know who you were until I saw your post last month. But you deserve to know she's done this before. I was stunned. We set up a Zoom call. Carla was polite, calm, and clearly still a little shaken, even after all these years. She told me I wasn't good enough for Dan, that I was too independent, and that he needed a more traditional wife. She came to my job, said horrible things to my manager. I left him because of her. I thought I was protecting him, but she always wanted to be the main woman in his life. I didn't even know how to respond. After talking to Carla, I realized something I didn't want to admit. Patricia wasn't just overbearing. She was dangerous in her own way. I told Dan everything. He sat silently for a while. Then he stood up, walked to the basement, and came back with a small box. I wasn't going to show you this unless things got really bad. Inside were letters. Dozens. Handwritten, folded neatly, some yellowed with age. They were all from Patricia. Letters she wrote Dan while he was in college. Some were sweet, but most were disturbing. She says she had dreams of me dying so I wouldn't marry anyone. That no one would ever love me like she does. That women were leeches who would take me away from her. I felt sick. Dan looked at me, eyes glassy. She's not just toxic. She's obsessed. We made the hardest decision of our marriage that night. We cut Patricia off. No visits. No calls. No contact with the kids. It felt wrong. It felt awful. But it was necessary. Dan wrote her a long email explaining everything. Her behavior. The letters. The gossip. The lies. She responded within 10 minutes. One sentence. If you let her win, you're no longer my son. That was it. It's been 4 months. For a while, things were quiet. Then last week, we noticed a car parked across the street. Same time. Every evening. A woman inside. Just sitting. Watching. At first, I thought I was being paranoid. Then our neighbor asked if we were expecting someone. She said the woman in the car tried to ask her questions about us. Our kids. I confronted her. She drove off before I could reach the sidewalk. Dan thinks it's Patricia. I think she's using someone else. We filed a report. Changed our locks. Installed cameras. The story isn't over. I don't know what's coming next. But I do know this. Some titles you graduate from. Some you claw away with blood under your fingernails. I'm ready for her now. 3 days after the car incident, Dan checked the doorbell cam footage. He called me over. Watch this. There she was. Not Patricia, but her friend, Barbara. The same woman who used to come to every birthday party with a tray of homemade fudge and fake smiles. The same woman who once told me, marriage is just a phase. Mothers are forever. Barbara was parked across our street, in her car, watching our house. Every single day, between 5:45 p.m. and 6:20 p.m. She wasn't even subtle about it. We called the police again. This time, they agreed to send a patrol car during those hours. They couldn't do much more without direct threats, but it made us feel slightly better. Dan sent Barbara a warning message. We know it's you. Stay away from our home. Our kids. Our life. She left us on read. 3 weeks later, my boss pulled me into her office. I got a call about you, she said, her tone uncertain. From who? She wouldn't give a name. But she said she was a family friend and she felt obligated to warn us about your behavior. My stomach sank. She claimed you were emotionally unstable and had a recent breakdown, that it might affect your performance. I sat there, frozen. My boss, thankfully, had known me long enough to not believe it. But the fact that someone actually did this, tried to sabotage my job, there was only one person who would go that far. Only one person who knew where I worked, what my boss's name was, and had no shame about trying to destroy me. Dan lost it. He called Patricia's landline. She answered. He put it on speaker. You called her job? He demanded. You're imagining things, she replied calmly. But if I did, maybe I was just worried about your wife's influence. Maybe it's affecting the children too. I took the phone. Patricia, if you come near me, my husband, or my kids ever again, I will go to the police with everything, your letters, your gossip, the surveillance footage. I am not afraid of you anymore. She didn't say a word. Then she hung up. Dan's uncle called us a few days later. Look, he said, I've kept quiet all this time, but this is getting out of hand. There's a reason your mom is like this. He invited us over to Charlotte, and we sat down in his living room with 2 of Dan's cousins and his aunt. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Patricia had spiraled. Back when Dan's dad left, she blamed his family, friends, and coworkers. She stalked his new girlfriend. Showed up at the woman's kids' school once, just to make sure they were safe. She even made fake reports to CPS. Yes, actual Child Protective Services, trying to get custody of Dan when he was a teenager. She's never gotten over losing control, the uncle said. Dan getting married? Having kids? That just sent her back to that place. No one ever told us. They thought she had changed. That night, Dan got an email from a private Gmail account. Attached was a fake CPS letter, accusing us of neglect, of keeping the children in an unsafe, emotional environment. It looked real, but had mistakes. No case number, no contact info. But it was a threat. A loud one. It had one line that stuck with me. You have 3 days to do the right thing. Children should not be raised by liars. We took it straight to our lawyer. She confirmed it was fake and gave us something better, a restraining order request, and the green light to go public. We had tried to stay quiet. But Patricia wanted war? She got it. Dan posted on Facebook, public. Long, raw, detailed. He told the whole story. From the first comment on our photo to the stalking, the lies, the job sabotage, and now the fake letter. He posted screenshots, photos, even parts of the letters. And at the end, he wrote, My wife is not the villain. She's my peace. If you side with someone trying to tear down her life, then you were never really on mine. The post went viral within our community. People started commenting, neighbors, former friends, even other family members who had stayed quiet for years. I believe you. She did similar things to my sister. She made my wife cry at our wedding. She told me I wasn't welcome in the family because I wasn't blonde enough. It was a flood. Truth pouring out after years of silence. 2 days later, we got a certified letter at the door. From Patricia's lawyer. It was full of nonsense legal jargon, claiming we were defaming her character and engaging in public slander. Our lawyer laughed. She won't win. She knows it. This is intimidation. But let's hit back. We filed the restraining order. And we filed for an official cease and desist. We even made a statement to the local paper, just in case she tried to spin her version. This wasn't about Facebook anymore. It was about making sure she could never touch our kids. Our jobs. Our lives. Last night, our 7-year-old daughter asked, "Why doesn't Grandma come anymore?" Dan and I looked at each other. We sat them both down and explained carefully that sometimes people who are supposed to love you don't know how to do it in a healthy way. That Grandma was making some very bad choices, that we had to protect our family. They nodded. Quiet. Then our son said, "We still have you and Daddy." That's enough. I cried that night. Not because I was sad. Because I was proud. They understood more than I thought they could. I wish I could say things got better after the legal action, after the public post, after the community saw the truth. But that's not how people like Patricia operate. They don't disappear quietly. They plot in silence. 2 weeks passed with no word. No sightings. No drama. I was on edge the entire time. Then one morning, Dan opened the mailbox and froze. There was a printed photo inside. It was a picture of our daughter, taken from a distance. On the school playground. She was laughing, hair flying in the wind. On the back of the photo was one sentence: "You can't keep her from me forever." That was it. Dan slammed the front door shut so hard the glass shook. He was trembling. We're done being scared. We turned everything over to the police. This time, with the photo as evidence, they took it seriously. They questioned Barbara. She caved within 2 days. Said Patricia had been paying her to drive by our house, giving her instructions, using a second phone to avoid being tracked. But she wasn't just watching. She was planning something worse. She had tried to hire someone, yes, hire someone to show up at the school and cause a scene. Pretend to be an aunt. Get access to the kids. When we heard that, we packed bags, drove to a hotel, and stayed there until the police had her in custody. Patricia was arrested on a Thursday morning. Charges included stalking, harassment, attempting to impersonate a guardian, and solicitation of interference with custody. It hit the local news. Neighbors watched from their porches as she was handcuffed in a house goat, yelling about ungrateful children and how she built this family. The neighborhood message board exploded. We had to explain things again to our kids, in kid language. But they knew. They knew. And that's what hurt the most. Even they saw what she'd become. The trial was short. Barbara testified. Dan's uncle brought the old letters. We gave them everything. The CPS threats, the job sabotage, the photo. The judge didn't mince words. You're not just a toxic mother. You're a threat to public safety. Patricia was sentenced to 18 months in prison. 5 years of no-contact probation. Full permanent restraining order for me, Dan, and the kids. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She just stared at Dan and said, "You were always hers. I knew it the day you married her." Like she still believed she'd been cheated. Now here's the part one didn't expect. Even after everything, I started to wonder about me. Not in a guilt way, but in a deep, uncomfortable way. I had always seen myself as the victim. But I realized I let things go too far, too long. I thought staying quiet was being the bigger person. But it wasn't. It was avoidance. I should have called Patricia out years ago. I should have protected my kids before she got that close. I should have stopped trying to keep the peace and started setting fire to her nonsense the first time she disrespected me. Dan forgave himself too for ignoring signs, for making excuses. We both made mistakes, but we're not making them again. Last week, we got a certified letter in the mail. It came from the prison. It was from Patricia. We didn't open it at first. Dan stared at the envelope for a long time. Then he handed it to me. "You decide." I opened it. 1 page. Neatly written. "I didn't lose you to her. I lost you to truth. And truth is something I never respected enough to keep you. I hope the kids forget me. That will be my punishment." I called him my favorite person too, once. But he was never really mine. No apology, just regret. And maybe that's all we ever needed from her, to see herself for who she was. Not a victim, not a mother, just a woman who held on too tightly and destroyed everything around her.